Welcome back, Raider Nation. It is Thursday. It is time for yet another edition of the enthralling Silver and Black Today podcast, an Odyssey original podcast covering nothing but the Las Vegas Raiders. Thanks for being with us, everybody. I am Scott Branson, as always, joined by my co-host, Mr. Mo Moten. He is the national NFL writer over at Bleacher Report. He's also the Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. You can also follow him on Twitter at MOEMOTON. You can follow me at LVGully. Happy Christmas week. Merry Christmas coming up. This will be the last time we talk to you before Christmas. Of course, the Raiders playing on Christmas Eve, and our families would all disown us. Yes, radio people do work on the holidays, but we are not in radio. We are in the world of podcasting. And I have kids, and so guess what? And Mo's got rainbow cake to eat, as well as what do you do on Christmas, Mo? You guys do you eat on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day? Like, what's the bigger day for you guys?
I would say Christmas Eve night. The night of Christmas Eve is the biggest day. Unfortunately, I'm going to be working on Christmas Eve. Got to cover the league because the NFL decided that, these sports people don't have families. So why not have Christmas Eve games instead of on Christmas Day? But usually that's the big night where someone, I won't say, usually we rotate it, but a different person will cook a big meal. Everyone will go to that person's place and we all just feast on everything. But we always, as you mentioned, we always have the chocolate rainbow cake. I posted a picture of it on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm showing people it is a Moten special that's been passed down from generation to generation. I know different families make it, but there's a special way that my family likes to make it. And the recipe will be passed down to me once I start a family. So once that happens, you will know Mo Moten is making a rainbow cake. That's when you know that I have a family.
Now we know that you love the rainbow cake, but and you're going to get the recipe you just mentioned. But can you already make it though?
I think I can already make it because I've actually, since I was 5 years old, I would sit and watch my grandmother make the cake, and of course lick the pan after she's done with the batter. So
of course,
I've basically had a front row seat, so I already know how to do it. But I'm not in charge of making the cake for the entire family until I have a family of my own. That's how we do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Great tradition. And I'm jealous. We have other stuff here, but I would love the rainbow cake. We'll have to, when you get the recipe, you could share it. And I will give full 100% credit to Grandma Moten for that. I will not begrudge her at all for that. Okay. So here's what we're going to get into now. Of course, we got to start off the show. Yesterday we released a short snippet of an interview I did with Phil Villapiano, of course, Raiders great linebacker Phil Villapiano, with the unfortunate news that Franco Harris died suddenly at 72 years old yesterday on Wednesday, just days before the Steelers were set to retire his number and to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, or as Raider fans call it, the Immaculate Deception. So if you haven't had a chance to read it, it's only about 4.5 minutes. But go ahead and listen to that. That was released yesterday here on the podcast feed, so you could do that. But Mo, I wanted to start there with it because, number one, the interview with Phil was great because that was the first time I interviewed him back in 2018. And he talked about how every December 23rd, Franco Harris would call him just after 4 p.m. Eastern and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right. And it's such a beautiful, and having lost one of my best friends from childhood just a couple of years ago, that camaraderie you develop with somebody. And in this case, they were adversaries, and they are forever linked by this play. And this play, when both men are gone and all involved are gone, it will live on in the annals of NFL history and be bantied about. Raider fans and Pittsburgh fans will argue for it for centuries, right, over this play. And to hear them talk about and to hear how they grew so close. And we were going to have Phil on the show this week to actually talk about the anniversary. And unfortunately, this happened, so we couldn't make that happen. It's just a crazy coincidence with that. But just sad news. 72 years old these days, very young. And it seems like it was unexpected. We don't know. And obviously the privacy of the family is first and foremost. But these two guys linked, and Franco Harris, just a great player, and went out to Oakland the last year, was inducted into the Black Hole Hall of Fame, went to the tailgates, mixed it up with Raider fans, had fun. Just a gracious guy who I think understood first and foremost that he was blessed to be able to play the game and play it for so long and successfully, and then appreciated the fans in Raider Nation as well.
Well, this is why I always say, always give people their flowers while they can still smell them and are alive. But from the interview that you did with him, I thought it was funny that I think it was Phil said that Harris called his mom. And
his mom.
Yes, and his mom had to find him so that he could talk to him on that special day. But it's funny how, you know, how fans of opposing fan bases, they go after each other on Twitter, and it's all in good spirit. But Harris being involved with Raider fans and just kind of having fun with them shows that even though you can wear a different colored jersey, you can still appreciate a player, even though he's a Steeler or whatever team he plays for. And to have that link in history, I'm sure Raider fans remember it not fondly, but just a good guy, and just to have him be part of that and be part of the whole celebration, not celebration, but the anniversary, and reminding people, you know, what happened. Being a fun-spirited guy. A lot of people on Twitter, you know, shouting him out, saying, you know, he was like a godfather to me. Najee Harris had a picture, I believe, with him. Jerome Bettis, of course.
Charlie Batch.
Yes, a lot of Steelers out
guys.
there.
Yeah,
he had a lot of respect of people inside that organization and outside of it, and well deserved too.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is as we start to see these guys that some of us grew up with, you know, for those of us that are over 40, 45 especially, we remember those guys and watch them play, and so it just gets to be that way. But also the fact that the history of the game is so rich, right? And this is an example, Franco Harris and obviously Phil Villapiano, and that whole interaction that they had and how it got them closer together and how they became friends over it is really remarkable, because we saw also over the weekend this viral video of the Patriots fan being berated by a crazy woman, a Raider fan. Sorry, she I know it's not representative of all Raider fans, but just going nuts on this young man who showed just an amazing amount of restraint. I want to give him credit for that. But you see that, and you look at, you know, we all get passionate about things we love, including our sports teams, and nobody does that more than Raider Nation, right? But this idea that you can't like or get along with or find some camaraderie with even people on teams that you don't like, these two guys showed you how it's done. And I think modern day fans can be passionate, hate your Chiefs, hate your Broncos, and all that stuff. That doesn't mean you have to hate everybody who likes those teams. And I think there's a big lesson there, Mo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our friend of the show, Lucille, I believe she had a picture of. She took a picture with a Chiefs fan who's looks like a big rat, and it was a fun. Right, it was a fun spirited photo.
Yeah,
and it was just kind of sad to see that people were like, "Why are you even taking a picture with that? You know, with that Chiefs, mascot, whatever." And it was just like, "Come on, guys! It's one thing to hate a team, but to hate people is a different story." But to your point, I want to point out that most Raider fans are not like that woman that was in the stadium, the Patriots fan, or the people who commented on Lucille's photo. Most Raider fans are fun spirited. You've watched, I know Raider fans are going to cringe when I say this, but if you watch a lot of Raider home games, there are a lot of fans of the opposing team in the stadium. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it's pretty peaceful and fun spirited.
It is. And that's what I said immediately when this was going around was, hey, look, this is not indicative of Raider Nation. Yeah. And actually, I messaged the guys from our sister podcast in New England, the Six Rings and Football Things guys, because they went out and they made a funny video, which I'll share tomorrow. I forgot to share it, where they went around to all the tailgates talking to Raider fans, and it was good natured, back and forth between people. Never mean-spirited, but definitely making fun of the tuck rule and all that jazz. And that was great. And I told them too, because I said, look, this video, you guys know you were there. This is not how most Raider fans are. Yeah, they're going to talk trash to you, but it's all going to be fun. They'll buy you a beer afterwards, right? So that was important too. And I know that it's one of those deals where, like, sometimes people, and I guess it's the state of the world too, Mo, people take things so seriously. and they get overly invested emotionally in almost everything. And whether it's about being a writer, it's a winning a football game or whatnot. We know that most of Raider Nation, like our good friend Murph and the work he did for charity, for the Blitnikoff Fund. I mean, this is what Raider fans do. They donate money. They do all kinds of things. So, in memory of Franco Harris, I want to make sure that we remember that, because that's how fans act. And I think that's how Raider fans, by and large, mostly act. And there's always going to be bad apples. It doesn't matter what fan base it is.
Quick thing too. Before I started covering the league and the Raiders, I actually covered the Steelers for a couple of years. I believe it was 2013 to 2014, before people really knew who I was. And I will say that from my perspective, being that I was able to cross over, I think there's a mutual respect between Raider fans and Steeler fans. I don't see a lot of, I hate the Steelers. And usually the Steelers and Raiders, I mean, they're both story franchises, both proud franchises with a lot of history, rich history. Oh, yeah. So I think there is a mutual respect there, that they may not root for each other's teams, but they know, like, okay, that's another well-respected organization. They do relatively well in their history, and they have a long story history as the Raiders do. So
yeah, I mean, you look at what I consider the golden age of the NFL. I mean, I guess we might be in another one now, but you look at it back then, and Steelers had 4 Super Bowls, the Raiders had 3 championships, and of course they played each other in these games, including 50 years ago this weekend with the Immaculate Reception. So yeah, I think you're right there. I think that's it. There's other fans out there that seem to want to antagonize Raider fans more. I don't see that from the Steeler fan base. I'm sure somebody on the show will tell us that we're wrong, but nonetheless, it's good natured, and I just think that seeing Phil's daughter Andrea, who's always helped for us getting in touch with Phil, and seeing them post the stuff with them. They spend a lot of time together with families and all that kind of stuff, and so our condolences go out to Franco Harris's family, his wife, his son, and everyone close to him, including the Villapianos. Just a tough loss there. But of course, these teams are going to go at it on Saturday in what are going to be frigid temperatures, Mo. -4. You and I live out here. I know it's going to be wind chill here in Ohio is going to be -20. Not as bad up north in Pittsburgh, about 4 hours north of me, but still going to be really cold. And anytime you have a team from the West Coast, number one, now a team from the West Coast that plays in a dome going out east, this is going to be the conversation between now and Saturday.
Absolutely. I remember there was a time where the biggest narrative about the Raiders going to a cold weather stadium or a cold weather destination is, can Derek Carr perform in cold weather? And it seems like that's not talked about as much this time around. Maybe as we get closer to the game, we'll hear more about it. But I remember there was a time it was like, Derek Carr, if the temperature's under, I don't know, 30, I'm just throwing a number, 35 degrees, his production drops, and that was a big deal. So at least I could say, even though the Raiders are going east, it's a night game, so it's not like they have to go play a 1 p.m. Eastern time zone game. Yeah. So being that it's late at night, it kind of matches if they were playing on the West Coast at around 4 or 5 o'clock. So at least there's that. But as you said, they do have to deal with the blustering cold.
Yeah, now, but they got to get the game over quick so they can get home and get to bed before Santa comes, right? So, there's that pressure. But no, the cold weather, I mean, it's a big deal. And the Derek Carr thing, that was always in regards to really Kansas City late in the season, right? It was Kansas City, Denver late in the season, especially in Arrowhead where Derek Carr was having trouble getting wins. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk more about Derek Carr, too. More reports about Derek Carr's future floating out there. Last week it was Tashawn Reed at The Athletic and Vinny Bonsignor at the RJ. This week our friend Hondo Carpenter at SI, and then the folks over at PFF talking about possible veteran quarterback trades. So when Mo and I come back from the break, we're going to talk about that. Yes, it's going to be another Car Wars segment. Or at least part of a segment. We're not going to devote a whole segment to it, but we'll talk about it a little bit. We'll also get into the game. Starting the third segment, we'll have our game preview from our producer and correspondent, David Stepani, and then Mo and I will give you our predictions. And the moment Mo waits for, he has it on his calendar all year. All year, he just counts the old calendar with the red X's for each day until he can hear me read "'Twas the Night Before Raider Nation Christmas."
This
Yes.
is my third year hearing it, so
it will
I'm
be.
excited for it.
And if you haven't heard it before, welcome. If you have heard it before, I switch some things around. I don't switch the whole thing around. The first couple of years, I did switch the whole thing around, and that just got to be difficult because I try to keep it true to the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." So we'll see there. But that's what's coming up here on our show as we head into the Christmas weekend. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you do us a favor too. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. Just go search it, subscribe, and then put on the auto download for us. That way, every time we push a new show, like we did yesterday with the special interview segment about Franco Harris, you're going to get that. You don't even have to deal with it. You don't have to go look for it. It's just you turn your phone on and boom, it's there. Go do that for us as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit subscription and then hit the notifications bell. Both of them are important. That way you get notified every time we have a new video. All right, Mo and I will be right back here on Silver and Black Today. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Merry Christmas, everybody. It is time for another segment of Silver and Black Today. He, right over there, is Mo Moten. I am Scott Branson. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. We are here with you talking about the Raiders. Raiders coming up on Christmas Eve, playing in Pittsburgh against the Pittsburgh Steelers in what is, of course, every game now is a win-out scenario for the Raiders. They have to win all of them to have any chance. And we will go through the playoff scenarios next week if they win this week. Well, I'm not even doing it this week. I know a lot of people are starting to do it, and I'm like, yes, there's a chance, but don't even think about it. If Santa's nice and brings you a win and you're able to think about playoffs next year, then we'll talk about it. But let's dive back into the Derek Carr stuff we had talked about. Number one was the temperature, and we'll get to that in a second. But overall, a couple more reports, Mo, and I want to get your reaction to these. We had early in the week, PFF, Pro Football Focus, had a story entitled Realistic Trade Value and Landing Spots for Veteran Quarterbacks. Now, again, realistic means there's no indication this is going to happen, but these are possibilities based on current scenarios with teams around Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr, and some more. Those three guys are named, Mo, I think primarily because, look, Lamar Jackson's been unable to come to an agreement with the Ravens. We know that going back to last offseason. He's also hurt right now. And so his future in Baltimore seems to be maybe a little bit in flux. Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, we've been following that all year long. We know what's happening there. Not any certainty there whatsoever. And then, of course, Derek Carr, which we talk about all the time on this show. So with these guys, they went through this. And in essence, what they said was, look, the way his contract is structured and the possibility that Derek Carr could be traded because he does have the no trade clause. He's got 3 years left on a contract, which is $116 million and $3. A dead cap for the Raiders of $5.625 million. And what they did, Mo, is they said, hey, if there's a trade, their number one trade partner that they identified, completely guessing here, of course, folks, is the Buccaneers. Because the consensus is Tom Brady's probably going to be done there. And so they're saying that the Buccaneers in this scenario send a 2023 first and a third for Derek Carr. Now, let's start there, Mo, because you and I talked about this a couple shows ago. If Derek Carr were to be traded, and that's a big if, then we talked about maybe teams would want to give future compensation, or the Raiders might want to get future, meaning 24 picks, because you could probably get higher picks. I think they're off base here thinking that the Buccaneers are going to give the Raiders a first round and a third for Derek Carr. Am I wrong on that? Or do you think with where he's at right now and where the Buccaneers are at in their situation that they might be able to pull a first round draft pick for Derek Carr?
I actually think that's possible. And I'll tell you why, because if Tom Brady is in fact done with the Buccaneers, he moves on. What's the Buccaneers concession plan? Because they're probably, in my opinion, the Buccaneers are going to make the playoffs because they play in such a bad division. So they're not going to have a top 10, top 12, top 15 pick. So they're not going to turn to Blaine Gabbert. I mean, Kyle Trask. I mean, they don't have a plan, a backup plan after Brady leaves, and they won't be able to draft a guy high. Now, they signed a bunch of guys to contracts, so they can't splurge on a bridge quarterback either. Now Derek Carr's salary would play into that if they acquire him, but they're going to have to rework some things. It's not an easy pickup if the Buccaneers have to move on from Tom Brady. So I can see them actually doing that, because there are some people out there, and you may feel this way, that Derek Carr is not going to fetch a first round pick. I think he will. I don't think he'll get a first round pick from a team that is already at the top of the order, like I said, Houston Texans or the Carolina Panthers. I don't think he would get that level of first round pick, but a team that, as the Buccaneers are going to be, probably a team that's outside the top 15, picking on the back end of the first round. I think a team like that would prefer to take Derek Carr with their first round pick than draft the quarterback that late in the first round and throw a dart at a prospect who's not a blue chipper, but maybe turn into something in a year or two. Remember, the Buccaneers have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They got weapons over there. They have a roster that can win now. Why would they want to start with a rookie quarterback in 2023 versus a veteran that they can plug in right away and start winning football games?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think that again, so much of this speculation they have, and this time of the year as the season winds down, we see this from outlets, right, Mo? Which is, hey, there are guys going to move, and there is uncertainty even with a player like Lamar Jackson, a former MVP. And with Derek Carr, with all the talk and the chatter around that situation, and primarily, remember, before people get too upset, especially those of you who really, really, really like Derek Carr, the reason they're doing this is because of the way his contract is structured. That out they have in that contract is to me what brings this all up. And then, of course, the way the Raiders have underperformed this year makes some people believe that the Raiders, I don't think that they're going to do as much as people think they are going to rebuild. And if they're going to rebuild, then maybe they would be willing to dump a veteran quarterback and the money associated with that, which we've talked ad nauseum here. So that's number one. Number two was Hondo Carpenter's report over at Raider Maven Sports Illustrated's website, which was also linked by our friends over at Raiders Beat. Hondo went into a deep dive around Derek Carr's future. And the interesting thing about this was that he's talking about it, number one, because we're still seeing this conversation. But also he said he had an anonymous source, okay, with the organization who said, this is what this source said to Hondo Carpenter, according to his report. It said, quote, Derek has been different this year. His teammates have noticed it as well. He has given maximum effort, but he seems to be easily frustrated. I don't know what bothers him. I love him, but it seems obvious that he is not his old self. I love him. I want him here, and I'm not rooting for a change, this person said. I can only imagine the constant barrage of negativity gets effing old. And that was a source to Hondo Carpenter. So not surprising, Mo, that he's frustrated, but it sounds like the frustrations and his personality. And I've said this, right? When I was going and advocating towards the middle of the season before the 3-game winning streak, that I thought they should maybe move on from one another, I said it from a mutual standpoint. And this is part of the reason, which was like, Derek Carr has got to be just tired of this. A new coach comes in, you get the excitement, you got a new playbook to learn, and you're like, okay, I'm committed. Let's do this. We're going to turn this thing around. And then each time it's like thump, 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 right? And now it's doing it again. And so I can see why he might be different to his teammates, because it's 10 years, dude. 10 years of constant dysfunction. Who the hell would want to stay in it? Who the hell wouldn't be frustrated? Who the hell wouldn't have their personality change?
Can you imagine working at a job for about a decade? You're doing your best. People are criticizing you every day, telling you should be let go of from your job or sent to another place instead of where you work at. And in the meanwhile, you're learning something new every 2 to 3 years because there's changeover at your workplace. Now, I'm not absolving Derek Carr and saying that, the drop off in his play is all because of the changes. But you got to understand that anyone whose position, if they feel threatened by their, in their position, they're going to be agitated. And if you watch Derek Carr during these games, after every completion, the TV actually, the broadcast actually shows his reaction when there's an incompletion, when there's an interception, when there's a turnover on downs, a botch play. Derek Carr looks frustrated after every completion almost. Now I know that's an exaggeration, but they literally show his face, and Derek Carr doesn't curse, but Derek Carr is like super, super frustrated after every misplay. And we saw it kind of bubble over when he had that press conference a few weeks ago, right? Remember, he teared up at the press conference. The Raiders went on that run. So you're kind of seeing it bubble to the surface with him anyway. We're all seeing it publicly. So I understand it. You're criticized week in, week out. But in fairness, that's what comes with the job of being a quarterback in the National Football League. When you're a quarterback and you're the most important player on your football team, you're going to get the criticism when your team is not performing well, whether it's warranted or not in certain situations. So a lot of people want to say, well, leave Derek Carr alone. And I understand that as a fan. You don't want your guy to be criticized over and over again for the same things because you've heard it all before. But that's the news cycle. And coming up through learning news writing and stuff like that, when people talk about you constantly, consistently, it means you're important. It means you're someone of interest. So if you're going to try to spin it into not a positive, but not so much into a negative, you look at it as Derek Carr has all these trade articles and columns that come out are because Derek Carr has a lot of value. And I said this on Twitter that a lot of Raider fans may not value Derek Carr because of the wins are not there, the red zone woes, as we talked about in this show. But he has value across the league. You know, more than a handful of teams would leap up to get a Derek Carr on their roster and get them going in the right direction because they absolutely need a capable, not even just capable, but a top 12, 13, 14 quarterback.
Yeah. He's not Mitch Trubisky, right?
No.
Which you'll see in Pittsburgh. And so that's the thing. He does have value, whether you like him as the quarterback or not. I get that. But at the same time, some of these folks also who do that will criticize and talk about firing Josh McDaniels, and he hasn't even finished a year, which I just find is ironic because it's like you have a guy on year 9 and you get excuses there, but the coach is just in year 1 and he doesn't have all the players yet, and you want to give. And I'm not making excuses for Josh McDaniels. I'm just saying fan hypocrisy tends to kind of depend where you're at on the scale of what player and who you're talking about, whether it's the coach, the player, on defense, offense, whatever. Very, very funny in my book. But yeah, I think that situation and the fact that he has value, you're going to have it. And because quarterbacks are the key position in the NFL on the team, it doesn't matter who you are. You have to have a good quarterback. You and I talked about it last show about the Jets. If the Jets had a real quarterback right now, where would they be? 3 wins better? Probably. I think so. So it just goes to show you that, yes, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Now, I'm not saying the Raiders don't make a move or that they shouldn't if the right thing comes along, because you got to always improve. But clearly that's where But still, we're seeing stories go back and forth about that. And before we move off Derek Carr, we'll revisit the cold weather scenario, Mo. I look back at it, and according to CBS Sports, Derek Carr is 0-6 in games where the temperature was 37 degrees or less at kickoff. That includes the loss in Cincinnati in the playoffs in January of this year. So he's not won a game in weather under 37, and the wind chill will be -4, and the temperature itself will be about 7 or 8 degrees in Pittsburgh on Christmas Eve. So Derek Carr's got an opportunity. I always look at these stats and I say, okay, 0-6. That doesn't fare well for the Raiders. But the great thing about stats like this too, Mo, is you always have the opportunity to break that.
Exactly. And I try not to get too far into stats like that, circumstantial statistics like
stats.
that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there are so many factors and context missing from that. Who do they play? What type of team did Derek Carr have around him and that? So I just kind of deal with the now, right? And right now, I feel like the Raiders have enough help. Even if Derek Carr doesn't play well in the cold, let's say he doesn't play well, the Raiders still have enough help around him where they can win that football game, primarily because they have the league leading rusher on their roster right now. So if you have the league leading rusher on your roster and going up against a team that recently gave up a ton of yards, and that didn't give up a lot of yards against the Panthers last week, but before that, Steelers were kind of inconsistent with their run game. If you have that advantage, then, as you said, you can kind of change the narrative on those circumstantial statistics on Derek Carr being 0-6 temperature and freezing temps.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we're going to hear a game preview from our producer and correspondent, David Stepanian. After that, Mo and I will get a little bit into this game. What we see is advantages, disadvantages for the Raider. We already talked about the weather. That's a disadvantage number one. And where we might see this thing ending up. And then we'll end the show in the Christmas spirit. Eating rainbow cake, having a little bit of... What do you drink, Mo? Do you drink eggnog? Are you an eggnog guy? No, you can't like eggnog.
I can't stand eggnog. I'm definitely
that's
not
what
an
I
eggnog
figured.
guy.
Nobody in my house is either. So we drink coffee, or we drink we'll have a little a hot toddy or something like that. That's what I like, because I like bourbon, so I can any whiskey I'm good with. So that's what I tend to take a little bit of on Christmas Eve, get to sleep really nice and fast. So it's all good. But when we come back, we're going to stay in the Christmas spirit. We'll recap what we think of this game and give you a preview as well. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. We'll be back right after this message. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, Raider Nation. It is Thursdays. This is the Thursday edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you don't already subscribe to the show, do Mo and I a favor. Give us the Christmas gift that keeps on giving, which of course is subscribing to the show, turning on auto download. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for being in there and being on the live chat. Make sure you also subscribe, hit the notifications bell there as well. Mo is a national writer covering the NFL for Bleacher Report. He also is the Raiders columnist up on sportsnaut.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Mo Moton. That's MoEMoton. And I am at LV Gully on Twitter. So get on there, interact with us. If you're a hater, I don't care. And we'll have fun with you anyway, because we love everybody.
Quick interjection. Since you bring up Twitter, please, if you're on Twitter, I don't know if anyone has seen this, but they now have sardine flavored candy canes. I don't know if you saw that. They have brisket flavored candy canes.
Brisket?
Please. Yes. Brisket and sardine flavored candy canes are out now. Dude. If you are sharing that on Twitter, please unfollow me, or don't follow me, or just block me, because I will block you if I have to, because that is an atrocity. Those are Christmas atrocities.
That is, and it just goes to show you, for those of you who do have a faith of some sort, I happen to be a Catholic guy. It's the coming of the apocalypse. To have candy canes that are flavored like this. I saw another crazy one too, but you don't like mint though, so you don't like candy canes anyway, right?
I actually like the rainbow candy canes.
Oh yeah, the sweet ones,
right?
Yeah,
they're not mint. So
my kids eat those. Yeah, okay,
those
I know which ones.
Much better.
And those are acceptable because they're sweet. Okay, yes. We're not eating meat flavored candy. Meat flavored candy. Now, I love bacon. Like, for example, I think bacon is great almost on everything, but not good in candy. Don't give me a bacon candy cane. Don't give me bacon cake. Like, they have bacon donuts. You ever seen the maple with the bacon? Now, I know maple goes with bacon, but not on a donut. What is wrong with people, dude? This is terrible. Oh.
I logged up at Twitter after I saw that.
Oh, I know. It's craziness out there. All right. So we're back. We're talking Raiders football. We're going to do real quick, for those of you listening to us on the audio podcast, we're going to cut away and we're going to bring you our game preview, Raiders at the Steelers on Christmas Eve. Here's our producer, correspondent, David Stepanian.
Coming off a win for the ages against New England just over 20 years after the Tuck game, the Raiders head to Pittsburgh on the 50th anniversary of another win for the ages, albeit with the Raiders on the losing end of that one. Yes, it's been 50 years since one of the most memorable plays in NFL history, the Immaculate Reception, and all eyes will be on Heinz Field as the Silver and Black take on the Steelers in a holiday primetime matchup. Coach Josh McDaniels knows how consistency will be key to pulling off an upset.
You know, we need to be able to go out and call a play in the huddle and, break the huddle and get to the line of scrimmage and, snap the ball without penalty before the play clock's down. So, no, there's just, we can't do that, not and consistently play good offense, so it just isn't something that's like, it's happening every week, but for me, if it happened in week 1, I would be pissed, you know what I mean? So, it's not something where you need, 12 games to fix it, The reality is it's a fundamental aspect of playing offense, defense, or special teams is playing without committing penalties. And so, we've talked a lot about, it's hard to win until you stop from losing, and penalties obviously are a way for you to hurt yourself and your team. So, we don't coach them. We're going to continue to coach the right techniques. We harp on that. You guys obviously saw us running laps and all that kind of stuff in training camp. So, that doesn't stop. So, we just got to go back to, the fundamental part of, executing the snap and not committing a foul prior to it. And, there's no shortcut to it, though.
Rookie first-round QB Kenny Pickett is expected to return this week after being injured against Baltimore 2 weeks ago. Josh Jacobs continues to lead the league in rushing with nearly 1,500 yards, and Derek Carr tied a season high with 3 TDs against the Pats. And he'll be the first to tell you it's not how you start, but how you finish.
We're just every day, honestly, we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to get all the right guys and everyone on the same page to do the right thing every day. Because when everybody does the right thing, the results are good, And I'm not talking just a game, I'm talking about play, to do the right thing, but it's familiar. We talked about the same thing 12 months ago. We have to keep playing, and is it guaranteed? No. I mean, a lot of things got to go our way. We got to work really hard and win this week. And so it starts with my preparation tonight, on the Steelers, and moving on. I get to enjoy it with my teammates, and then as soon as I'm out of here, it's over. And so, I think as long as we keep that focus. And stay true to what we believe in as a team and who we are. And I mean, Josh's message, we believe in it and we do it. He'll give us the keys to win the next game, and hopefully we can keep it going.
The Raiders are 5-2 all-time against Mike Tomlin, with their last loss against the Steel Curtain coming in 2015. They beat the Steelers at Heinz Field just last year. The Steelers are a 2-point home favorite, with kickoff slated for 5 o'clock Pacific on Christmas Eve, and temperatures expected to hit below 10 degrees. Can the Silver and Black unwrap an early Christmas gift? The loser of this game will likely be eliminated from playoff contention. For Silver and Black Today, I'm David Stepanian.
All right, welcome back. Thank you, David, for that preview of the game. Mo, this game, not exactly two teams that are seriously fighting for the playoffs, but they're alive for the playoffs, so they all think they have a chance at the playoffs. So the TV networks are building it up as like some big game for them. But it's just a fun Christmas Eve game between two old AFC rivals. But you look at this, we already talked about the weather, the disadvantage. To me, that's the biggest disadvantage outside the control of the Raiders that they're going to face there in Pittsburgh. But what else are you seeing from this Pittsburgh Steelers team and how they've been able to play despite lots of deficiencies on offense for the Steelers? But the Steelers, under Mike Tomlin, Mo, always play pretty good football even when they're deficient in talent.
I will say that the statistics for the Steelers defense may be a little out of whack, out of skew, because at the beginning of the year, they didn't have TJ Watt for a large chunk of the first half of the season. Now that he's back, they have a pretty good dynamic duo on the edge with him and Highsmith. I believe it's Alex Highsmith.
Alex, yeah.
And of course, Cameron Hayward in the middle. So they have guys who can get to the quarterback. And as we know, I don't know if Alex Bars is going to be playing Saturday. We don't know if Dylan Parham is going to be playing, but what happened in the second half of that Patriots game we talked about in the last show? They were able to get inside on that Raiders offensive line and put pressure on Derek Carr. So I would look out specifically for that. TJ Watt, Highsmith, and Hayward getting pressure on Carr, because if they're able to do that, it could be a long day. It could be a long night for the Raiders, even on the ground, because those guys can penetrate and get Jacobs in the backfield.
Well, and Mo, we look at that, and you're absolutely right as far as that offensive line goes. And it looks like Jermaine Illuminor will be back, right? Too. It looks like he's been healthy on the practice injury list, so it looks like they'll get him back. And Alex, as valuable as gold bars to you, it'll be interesting if they can get back to full strength there. That'll be a huge win for the Raiders just going into the game. But knowing what the Steelers do well, you pointed it out, that could be rough for them as well. What about on that back end? If Derek Carr does have time to throw it, what do the Steelers look like in the defensive backfield with Devontae Adams, with Hunter Renfrow, with Darren Waller now, those guys going into their second game back from IR? Could they have a field day if they can get the ball out of the pocket?
Absolutely think so. I wrote about this on the column that went up today. We placed our bets on that Steeler-Raider game, and I mentioned that having a full house, I know people say, oh, it's a little too late. Having that full house of Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, Devontae Adams, as you just talked about, even Foster Moreau and Mac Hollins, having those guys on the field all together, I think bodes well for the Raiders offense when they can get down the field. As we know, Derek Carr is one of the best play-action quarterbacks in the league. A lot of people don't talk about this. The film guys do. But he's one of the best play-action quarterbacks in the league. Once you get that run game going, or at least force the Steelers to respect the run game, then you could take shots down the field. Now, Derek Carr may not throw 25 times in the cold, but if you can get 10 good passes deep downfield, I think that'll be enough to shake up that Steelers secondary, which is shaky because the strength of the Steelers off defense is in the front seven. On the back end, they've been very shaky. And that's why when TJ Watt wasn't playing, they were giving up a lot of points, a lot of the yards through the airs because their cornerbacks, they don't have a lead cornerback to me that can match up with Devontae Adams one-on-one. They're going to have to double team him, and that's going to leave Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow and Mac Hollins getting some opportunities on the outside.
Well, let's switch to the offense now for the Steelers. The quarterback position, of course, Ben Roethlisberger gone, retired. They, of course, drafted Kenny Pickett, who's been up and down, has played this year. Mitch Trubisky, who never attained his value as far as being a high first-round draft pick. Mason Rudolph also there still as well in Pittsburgh. Looking at that offense, Najee Harris, you talked about the running back, good player. The offensive line for the Steelers seems to be up and down. They seem to be having some issues there as well, like the Raiders are. What are the Raiders' defense going to be looking at? The defense of the Raiders, we talked about the last show, as maligned as it has been, and yes, it's imperfect, giving up late drives and so on. But again, if 5 games, the Raiders defense has only given up 21 points once and not given up more than 17 4 times. What does that matchup look like between the Raiders defensively and the Pittsburgh Steelers offensively?
Now, you brought those numbers in a previous show saying the Raiders defense is not as bad as a lot of people think it is. And I agree with you there. And I think the Raiders defense should be able to handle the Steelers offense because it's not explosive. You started with talking about Kenny Pickett. He missed last week and Mitch Trubisky was in against the Panthers, but that was the Panthers. Kenny Pickett, as you mentioned, up and down. I believe he has 4 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. Mm-hmm. Now, he can move the ball down the field with his playmakers. He has Deontay Johnson outside, he has Pat Freiermuth at tight end. He has George Pickens at wide receiver, the rookie second rounder. But with Kenny Pickett, he is still on the job. He's still learning how to be a NFL starting quarterback. So I think the Raiders, if they can get some pressure on him, now he can move, so you have to count for him and his legs. But they can get some pressure on him. They can force him to make some error throws. I believe guys like Deron Harmon, maybe Trayvon Merrick turns the corner. Those guys can force some turnovers if they can hang on to some interceptions on the back end because Kenny Pickett is going to make some mistakes. The strength of the Steelers right now is they were able to get their run game back going with Najee Harris over the past few weeks. Now, if they bottle him up and they force Kenny Pickett to beat them, I think the Raiders would take that any day of the week.
Well, and that's what concerns me, though, is if you look at last week against the Patriots offense, too, is not lighting the world on fire either, but they were able to run the ball. Huge, big time. Yep. And to me, I see some similarities between the Steelers and the Patriots in how their offenses are running. They're not consistent in passing the ball, but they can run the ball effectively. And if the Raiders are doing that, this could be another close, especially with the weather, close, low-scoring game is what I expect it to be.
I mean, the Steelers ran for 154 yards plus in 2 of their last 3. So yeah. They're able to go downhill. So this cold weather game is, to me, it's going to be a battle of which team gets their running game going and how do they play off of the run game. As I mentioned, the Raiders can use play action off of that and get Devontae Adams and Mac Hollins and Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller and all those guys involved. If they can attack with some balance, I think the Raiders should, I don't want to say run away with the game, but they should be able to handle the Steelers on the road.
Yeah, and the other issue besides the cold is the wind. The wind initially was not, it's going to be windy, but not extremely windy. But now the weather reports continue to change as this big storm gets ready to wallop the Midwest and the Eastern Seaboard over the Christmas weekend. And so if that wind kicks up, Mo, then to me, this is the kind of game we saw. Remember last year in Cleveland with the Raiders, with the rain and the wind, and it really came down to running the ball, some key plays, and turnovers. I think that's going to be another issue here, as the Raiders' defense is going to have to try to get a takeaway here or there, and the Raiders' offense, you can't afford to put the ball on the ground or to throw a pick in this one against the Steelers.
Now, I know Derek Carr threw a pick 6 in the last game against the Patriots, but looking at the entire season, the Raiders have been pretty good. I believe while you were out, I pointed this out, that even though the Raiders are one of the most penalized teams in the league, they have one of the fewest turnovers. They don't turn the ball over very much, the Raiders. They're way at the bottom of the league when it comes to turnovers. So they've done a good job of protecting the football, and Josh McDaniels has harped on that during the offseason. So I think when it comes down to the turnover battle, the Raiders had the edge there, because you're but you're matching up a 9-year quarterback. Again, I know Derek Carr threw the pick 6 and everyone's focused on that, but Kenny Pickett, 8 interceptions, 4 TDs. He's going to make some mistakes. If you get a little pressure on him, he is going to give you a chance to intercept that football. And I think the Raiders just have to pounce on those opportunities. And if they do, they'll be able to blow the game open.
Yes. And here's my prediction, Mo. I'm going to predict, and this goes against my better judgment. I'm going to predict the Raiders 17-13 over the Steelers. So it's going to be a low-scoring game again. And I know people are going to laugh and say, you think they're going to hold the Steelers to 13 points? And I say, yes, they will, because the last 4 games, 4 out of 5, they've held teams to 17 or less. And the Steelers are not very good on offense right now. So even if they run the ball effectively and gain some yards, if they 150 yards, whatever, I still think the Raiders could keep it, because I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to pass the ball as effectively as they would like.
One thing I will say, that you mentioned the win, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Raiders are going to have to be efficient in the red zone, because I don't think they're going to be kicking 55-yard field goals in those conditions. So either team. So both teams are going to have to be really good at once they get inside the 20. And, to the Raiders' credit, they converted. I believe I wrote about this. Matt Collins had that 5-yard TD catch inside the 20. So we'll see where the Raiders are as far as the red zone is concerned. I'll say Raiders win 21-17.
21-7. Okay, so you're in the same range I am as far as the scoring, about the same.
Yeah, about the same. So notice what about that score. No field goals for the Raiders. I feel like they have to score touchdowns. So they score 3 touchdowns. The Steelers score 2 touchdowns and kick a field goal up close, maybe out of, from 25, 30 yards out.
Yeah. And by the way, kicking the ball in a temperature like that thing is like a rock.
Yes.
So not only if you have the wind blowing it, but man, that's a tough kick. It's a tough kick. So that's why I only got them having 1 field goal. All right. So there you go. We both picking the Raiders in this one on Christmas Eve. All right, Mo, you ready? You ready for my pros here? Are you ready for 'Twas the Night Before Raider Nation Christmas?
I wish I had my silver and black, Christmas hat or something like that. I forgot all about it. I would have put it on and got in the mood for this.
Well, I got some music for you though. We're gonna put it on.
There we go.
That, of course, is Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, for those of you who are into the Nutcracker. Anyway, just for background music. All right, so here we go, Raider Nation. Get your cocoa, your coffee, your drink, whatever you're drinking. All right. 'Twas the night before Raiders Christmas, when all through Allegiant Stadium not a playoff berth was stirring, not even a wild card chance. The silver and black helmets were hung by the locker with care, in the hopes that St. Al Davis soon would be there. The Raiders players were all nestled and snug in their beds, while visions of Lombardi trophies danced in their heads, and Mark Davis in his white jeans eating chicken wings, Coach McDaniels in his visor, and GM Ziegler on the phone had just settled their brains, finally looking for some O-line help. When out on the roof there rose such a clatter, I sprang from the press box to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutter and threw up the sash. The moon on the sparkling lights of the strip gave a luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a long black Cadillac with bright chrome wheels and a shield on the hood and 8 Raiders greats riding in tow. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Al. More rapid than eagles in his Fleetwood, it came, and he winked and shouted and called them by name. Now Gannon, now Stabler, now Long and Jackson, on Branch, on Brown, on Blanda and Casper. To the top of the goalpost, to the top of the goalpost he went, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the desert wind fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the Death Star the coursers they flew, with a caddy full of Raider greats, and Al Davis too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the translucent roof the running and pounding of each Raider great's shoes. As I drew my head around, turning quickly, down through the lanai doors, St. Al Davis came with a bound. He was all dressed in black from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all crisp, clean, and there was not a sign of soot. A bundle of draft cards, free agent contracts flung on his back, and he looked like a football maverick just opening his pack. His silver sunglasses, oh, how they twinkled. His snarl, how scary his cheeks were chiseled, his nose sniffing for talent. His scrawling mouth was drawn up like a warrior, and the gait of his walk meant business. The stump of a pen he held tight in his teeth, and the notes about speed and agility encircled his head like a wreath. He had an air of excellence and a steely resolve that shook the rest of the league as they figured out how to solve. He was commanding and focused and forthright leader with guts, and I nodded when I saw him in awe of the sight. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the lockers, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside his nose and giving a nod up the grandstands, he rose. He sprang to his caddy, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him explain, ere he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all in Raider Nation, a good night, and remember, just win, baby. All right, there you go. Merry Christmas. Thanks for...
See, there you go. What other Raiders show gives you a Raider-specific Christmas carol like we do?
I'm telling you, see? Now, I won't sing to them because then they would never listen again, but... I did that several years ago, and I just decided that I'm going to do it for forever until I don't do the show anymore. Yeah. But anyway, we have fun with it, and one of these days I'll be able to change it to where it's about a playoff win or something. But it works out good. But Mo, I think that the Raiders going. It's always special when your team plays on a holiday, right? Because everybody's home. Mm-hmm. You're with loved ones. You're with family. You get to watch your team. Now I'm hoping the Raiders do win because. To be able to go to bed on Christmas Eve or into Christmas morning for some folks, depending where you're at, is a lot better than having to go to bed for Christmas and your team lost.
Especially if one of your Christmas gifts is the jersey of a person who makes a mistake. So can you imagine Mac Howell's jersey and he fumbled on the 2-yard line? And
oh my goodness, son! Here's your Trayvon Moore jersey. Oh no, he gave up 4 touchdowns. Yeah, no, exactly. That's true. That's true. But it's interesting too because I was talking at work today in the office about being when I was a kid. What were you about as a kid for Christmas? When you wanted the gift at Christmas? What was it? And for me and a couple of the other folks there, some guys, it was trucks or it was cars or it was whatever. And I was always sports stuff, right? I used to get, back in the day when they had the JCPenney and the Sears catalog, you could get the NFL sets with the helmet and the jersey. That was always on my Christmas list. And then any kind of ball. You give me a basketball, you give me a football, you give me baseball, all that stuff. What was it for you? What would you want so bad as a kid there in New York City for Christmas?
So just like you, it was some type of basketball, football, some type of item for sports. And I grew up in the 90s, so I grew up in Super Nintendo.
Oh,
And
yeah.
of course, Madden usually comes out in August, but I'm not old enough to buy Madden as soon as it comes out. So I would have to wait till Christmas to get my copy of Madden. So I would always wait for, the Madden. My aunt used to wrap up my gifts and do a little, like, how you do Easter egg hunting for Easter. She would do that with my Christmas gifts. So I would find my Madden video game, my NBA Live video game. And I used to, I wasn't a big jersey guy, but a couple of years I had a couple of jerseys. I do have a Jerry Rice Raiders jersey hanging in my closet to this day. I also have a personalized jersey with my last name on it hanging also in my closet. Maybe I'll bring those out eventually. Who knows? But
yeah, that's some background material there, brother.
Yes, definitely. So it was jerseys, anything dealing with sports and video games were my big thing on Christmas. It was the number one thing I was looking for, especially that Madden copy.
Yeah, video games. But if I tell you what video games I was asking for, it'll age me. But yeah, no, Super Nintendo, yep. Absolutely. I mean, and that was funny too. So I had somebody say, my Christmas music was Super Mario Brothers. Ding, 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 ding.
Mm-hmm.
It was like all that stuff. And I remember getting even a Game Boy, right? That was a big deal too. So yeah, it's fun and it's always such a great time of the year. And again, for me, it's mostly about family and being together. My son, my daughter, home, everybody's here. So the whole family's here, which is awesome. And I know your family is gathering around too. And all of everybody out there in Raider Nation, hope you have a wonderful Christmas. And Mo, you got to work, of course, on Saturday, and you're working Sunday too, right?
Working a little bit on Sunday, more so on Saturday because that's the big NFL day. Let me just say, there are some bad NFL Christmas games after that Dolphins Packers game.
Yeah,
you're getting the Broncos and the Rams. Both those teams were eliminated.
Yeah,
you're getting the Buccaneers, who are struggling against the Cardinals, I believe,
without the quarterback.
They're in their third string quarterback. So after the Raider game on Christmas Eve, just enjoy yourself and your family. Don't even bother. Don't even bother with the Christmas games because they're not worth it.
That's right. Absolutely. And so we're going to be away until next week. I may end up dropping something after the game or something. We'll see, depending if Santa's hit our house yet. But nonetheless, if not, we will be back on Tuesday for another edition of the show here. And we'll, of course, get into a game breakdown and let you know our thoughts on how the Raiders and Steelers went down. Mo, have a wonderful Christmas, my friend, and we will talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you and your family and everyone listening, Raider Nation, that have helped us on this network to be the number 3 podcast on the network. So we thank you and we're thankful.
Yes,
for everything that you do for us.
We are thankful. And next week we'll be able to kind of wrap up the year, which of course, since Odyssey launched this NFL network of podcasts this summer, the year will come to a close, and yeah, we've reached numbers that we never thought we would, and so we are incredibly thankful and feel blessed that you guys all support us, and thank you for that. All right, we're gonna take off, and I want to wish you and yours again a Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, Happy Holidays. I know you'll still get to spend some time with your family. Happy Hanukkah to those out there who celebrate it as well. For all of us here, including our producer and correspondent David Stepanian, Mo Moten, I am Scott Branson. Merry Christmas, Raider Nation. Have fun. Enjoy the game on Christmas Eve, and we will talk to you next week.